afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From 1 King Street West in downtown Toronto, welcome to the Empire Club of Canada. For those of you just joining us through either our webcast or our podcast, welcome to the meeting. Before our distinguished speakers are introduced today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our head table guests. I would ask each guest to rise for a brief moment and be seated as your name is called, and I'd ask the audience to refrain from applauding until all of the head table guests have been introduced. Let's see how good you are at taking instruction. So, ladies and gentlemen, your head table guests: Nicole Foster, National Chair, Equal Voice. Phillip Grosch, Partner and National Leader, PwC Canada. Teresa Resch, Vice President, Basketball Operations and Player Development, Toronto Raptors. Celina Caesar-Chavannes, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development. Chandran Fernando, Principal Matrix 360. Catherine Charlton, and we're so delighted she's with us today. She's a member of the Ontario Status of Women Council for 1975, the first woman manager of Ford of Canada, the first woman president of the Empire Club of Canada, and the retired executive director of Pro Action Cops and Kids. So Catherine, thank you so much for making the trek in. MJ Perry, Vice President and owner, Mr. Discount Director, Empire Club of Canada. John Manlapaz, did I get it right? Vice President of Development, Fordstone Capital. Chadwick Westlake, Senior Vice President, Structural Cost Transformation and Lean, Scotiabank. Member, Scotiabank Inclusion Council. Megan Boyle, Director of Public Affairs, Red Bull Canada, and a Director of the Empire Club of Canada. Ms. Carolyn Riseboro, President and CEO of Plan International Canada. My name is Barbara Jessen. I'm the President of Jessen & Company Communications and the President of the Empire Club of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, your head table guests. We're also very delighted to welcome a group of students from Ryerson who are attending with the generous support of Coca-Cola. Students, welcome. We're always delighted when we can have you with us. So where is our group of students? Please stand and be recognized. As I began to think about our panel today, I reflected back on my own first introduction to the Empire Club of Canada. It wasn't quite back in the dark ages before women were admitted to these lunches, but it might have been before the first woman served as president. Along with another colleague, I had been invited to an event at the Royal York Hotel. We arrived in our best business suits to join what was then a predominantly male audience. It certainly never occurred to me then that one day I might be back here at the podium as president, marking International Women's Day. Jump to today, and we at the Empire Club of Canada are very proud to have 12 women on our board of directors, all of them accomplished senior leaders at some of Canada's top organizations. I arrived in Toronto as a young woman, ardently committed to women's issues. My generation was part of that wave of feminism that followed the sexual revolution of the 60s. They were heady times. Like many others, I joined the Ontario Committee on the Status of Women, meeting in kitchens and living rooms after work to discuss issues and plot strategies. In preparing for my remarks today, I did try to do some research to remind myself of some of our activities and achievements. I confess it gave me a bit of a start to find the committee listed on the Canadian Heritage Database. It appears that we've been archived, so that was a bit traumatic. For those of us who fought so earnestly for the right to enter Canada's boardrooms, the rights to control our bodies, for the rights in family law, it seems now to be such an innocent time. The issues today seem so complex, compounded by the needs of immigrant women, Indigenous communities, and a growing revolution in health sciences and technology. For all of these reasons, I am just delighted to host this panel of leading women and men in Canada in acknowledgement of International Women's Day. With us is Ms. Celina Caesar-Chavannes, as I've mentioned. She's Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development. Ms. Caesar-Chavannes is a successful entrepreneur and the recipient of both the Toronto Board of Trade's Business Entrepreneur of the Year for 2012 and the 2007 Black Business and Professional Association's Harry Jerome Young Entrepreneur Award. With her is Phillip Grosch, a partner and national leader in the digital services consulting practice at PwC. He is the founding sponsor and champion of PwC's innovative leadership program targeted at top talent, particularly women, called Women in Leadership. He is a board member of W North, a boutique conference for top and aspiring women business leaders. Also on our panel is Teresa Resch. In her 5th season with the Raptors basketball franchise, Teresa was promoted to Vice President, Basketball Operations and Baseball Development, or Operations and Player Development in August 2015. Excuse me there, wrong sport. Prior to that, she worked with the NBA assisting the International Basketball Operations Department in operating basketball without borders camps on 4 different continents, in the process of establishing the first camp to feature women campers. Our 4th panelist is Caroline Riseboro. Caroline is the President and CEO of Plan International Canada, the leading NGO in the country, advancing the rights of children and equality for girls. In 2017, she was recognized as Canada's most powerful woman, Top 100 Award winner. She received the Bronze Medal in the Women of the Year Government and Nonprofit category at the Stevie Awards for Women in Business. And our panel moderator is Nicole Foster, head of Amazon Web Services Public Policy in Canada. As Equal Voice National Chair, she has served on the board of directors since 2015. She's an active volunteer with the historic Daughters of the Vote program. She served 2 terms as president of the National Women's Liberal Commission and on the Liberal Party of Canada's National Board of Directors. A very prestigious panel joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I now welcome Celina Caesar-Chavannes to the podium to offer words of welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, with a special recognition to the Mississaugas of New Credit First Nation. On this, the celebration of International Women's Day, it gives me great honor to be here on behalf of the Minister of Status of Women, Marian Monsef. Today, we join Canadians across the country and around the world celebrating women's contributions to our country and the common purpose we share in advancing equality together. It's an honor to be here with you on a very important day. This year's International Women's Day theme is My Feminism. It recognizes the role that feminism plays in bringing about positive change here in Canada and internationally, while building a more equal, secure, and prosperous world. My feminism is inclusive. It's about equality for all women and people of all genders. It's also intersectional. It's about empowering women and girls and people of all genders, no matter the complexity of their experience, to speak up and to make their voices heard. And I know that many of you in this room know that I'm no stranger to speaking up on a lot of issues that are critically important to ensuring that this country remains as prosperous for everyone as possible. Most importantly, my feminism is about possibility. Because when we work together and truly value what we bring to our country and to the world, there is no limit to what we can achieve. So the good news is that on this path to equality, we've made significant progress as a country over the last 150 years. Much has been achieved by working together, but there's still a lot that we need to do. Today we stand on the shoulders of many generations of women activists and advocates, many of whom are in the room today, who have turned so-called women's issues into issues for all Canadians. Now it's our turn to build on their success, to leverage the momentum created over the past year by Me Too movements and global women's marches. The question we face now is to seize the possibilities of the movement, to create promising futures for women, young women, and girls. The Government of Canada prides itself on its leadership, its policy, and the resources we've put behind this movement. We recognize that leadership is critical, and I'm proud that Canada is being recognized around the world on its gender equality. Through a going list of actions, the federal government is playing its part and leading by example. Our feminist agenda includes appointing a first gender-balanced federal cabinet, announcing a first federal strategy to address gender-based violence, enhancing the use of gender-based analysis by federal organizations, increasing the diversity of over 4,000 senior federal appointments, using the comply or explain approach to increase diversity on corporate boards, incorporating the first full gender statement in last year's federal budget. And in Budget 2018, we built on that. Canada's theme for International Women's Day reflects the government's feminist agenda. This agenda is also reflected in our budget, which focuses on gender equality as a driver of economic growth and strengthening the middle class. Budget 2018 supports the federal government's people-centered approach and is guided by a new gender results framework. This GBA Plus legislation will be enshrined into all budgets going forward. Budget 2018 also commits $100 million over 5 years to the Women's Program at the Status of Women Canada. This new investment will support projects to end violence against women and girls, improve their economic security and prosperity, and advance women and girls into leadership and decision-making positions. As well, Status of Women Canada will finally be made an official department within the government, strengthening its capacity to apply the gender and diversity lens to all programs. The budget also included measures to help improve women economically through a women entrepreneurship strategy, through ensuring that EI parental sharing plan that allows both men and women to participate in growing our children. We are strengthening the Canada Child Benefit, which helps more families who need it the most, such as those who are single mothers. In 2017's Fall Economic Statement, we indexed these benefits to keep up with the cost of living. This is very good news for families. And we also know that Indigenous peoples, in particular those who live in remote northern communities, face barriers when it comes to accessing federal benefits, such as the Canada Child Benefit. To help Indigenous peoples access the full range of social benefits, the Government of Canada is providing investments of $17.3 million over 3 years to expand outreach to Indigenous communities and conduct pilot outreach activities for urban Indigenous communities. This is what we're doing domestically, but on the international stage, our leadership is well known and recognized. Our commitment to ensuring that equality and the empowerment of women and girls are placed at the center of Canada's G7 presidency in 2018 is critical. We are working to mainstream gender equality across the work of the G7, including as part of all government-to-government engagement by ministers. Canada last year was elected to be a member of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women to help shape the Commission's work going forward. And of course, in my role as Parliamentary Secretary, we've put in place Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy, which focuses on the empowerment of women and girls as we look to build a more inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous world, because we know that we cannot do so while leaving 50% of the population behind. Ladies and gentlemen, feminism is a call to action for everyone who believes in gender equality, and it can't happen without you. You can inspire others by using the hashtag #MyFeminism to join the conversation. Use it to tell us what feminism means to you, to share stories about how you are helping to advance equality in your communities and beyond. You can be an inspirational role model or a mentor by sharing your experiences in business, government, and nonprofit organizations. At the end of the day, every action matters, whether large or small. It will move our communities and country closer to a healthy, respectful society that we want. And ladies and gentlemen, I cannot leave this stage without acknowledging that over the past few days, it has been particularly challenging for myself in the role that I have. I have heard individuals say that I might be a one-term MP because I continue to speak up about issues. And I accept that. I accept that because my feminism requires me to be bold. It requires me to have uncomfortable conversations and to speak my truth. It requires me to smash and challenge the status quo. But my feminism isn't for everybody. Not everyone likes black coffee, no sugar, no cream. So I implore you to be bold in your definition of your feminism. We have an army of young girls and boys here in Canada who are expecting no less from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Celina. That was very inspirational. I'd like to now ask the rest of the panel to join us to enter into our discussion. And Nicole, I think you'll be supervising and directing and managing and making sure that they stay on track. So, I'm sorry. So I'll let you go in.
I think anywhere is fine. Okay.
Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I will just say thank you to everyone who is here on behalf of the panel here. My name is Nicole Foster, and we are really excited to see such a full room here to celebrate International Women's Day for 2018. And the organization that I am a very, very active volunteer and passionate volunteer with is Equal Voice. And what Equal Voice does is really advocate for the election of more women. It's multi-partisan, which carries its challenges with it, as you can imagine. But one of the things that really that we really feel strongly about is that having women in positions of power and influence in our government is supremely important in terms of advancing the cause of women. So women like Celina are part of what inspires me. And I have always been looking for examples of leadership. And 20 years ago, there were very few examples of female political leadership, particularly at that national level or that international level. And so I particularly wanted to ask Teresa, because you are in such a unique field for a woman, and you are really leading in that organization. Did you have role models that inspired you in the world of sport?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I am not from Toronto originally, so the Empire Club is something brand new to me, so it's great to learn a little bit about this organization and be in a room full of people that, a lot of these faces I haven't really seen in a front office of an NBA team before. So it's great to have a broader audience, and hopefully we have a lot of Raptor fans in here, though, so maybe at the ACC. Oh, good. Woo. Friendly audience. But yeah, I think you always have role models, definitely, that you look up to. Growing up, I played sports growing up. I grew up in a very small town. There's only about 1,200 people, so as a 6-foot-tall woman, you are obviously playing all the sports, even if you're good or not. But I think, so my first kind of role models were at that level. So my coaches and the people that I played for. And I didn't really think of a national, much less international scale. So as I've gained a greater worldview, those people, those mentors, those inspiration have also become bigger. I think honestly, like the biggest inspiration has never really been women. It's been really men, because those are the people filling those roles. But now I hope that having the opportunity to be a female in the executive position on an NBA team, and really one of the very, very few people actually see women in those positions. And maybe there's a little boy who aspires to be me. So that's what I hope.
Absolutely. And Caroline, in the work that you're doing at Plan International, maybe you could just give us a little bit of insight into sort of the things that you're working on at the organization, and how, what's sort of front of mind for you right now at Plan International?
So for a bit of background, Plan International is one of the largest NGOs in the world. We work specifically on children's rights, and especially equality for girls. And we are pleased to be working around the world in about 73 countries, but also here in Canada with Canadian youth. So, what's top of mind right now? I think we've all heard of the Me Too movement and have actively engaged in it. And I think what we're seeing is a real tide of momentum behind gender equality. Not just because it's good for women and girls, but because we realize that gender equality actually helps entire societies move forward. So we are really working around the world on something called gender transformation. What is that? Well, it's not only changing the condition of women and girls, but it's changing their social position. And so, for instance, for many years, international development organizations have gone into different parts of the world. We have built schools, we have helped facilitate and strengthen health systems, but we were not seeing the needle move. Why? Well, because if a girl isn't valued enough for her to be sent to school, you can build as many schools as you want. You're not really making change. So what we are doing is actually working at all levels of society, government, community, and even the beliefs that individuals hold to increase the value of women and girls around the world. And just to finish the question, not only are we doing that around the world, but we realize there's work to be done here in Canada as well. So we work with Canadian youth to overcome challenges that they face, and they are significant. This statistic bothers me. We polled girls, teenage girls, 66% of them say that they feel their gender still negatively influences their academic and career choices. So we are also doing that work here in Canada. And there's lots of work still to be done.
So you mentioned Me Too, and there was no way we were not going to talk about that today. And what I've seen in some of the articles has really been people starting to talk about not just how this is impacting women, but the role that men can play in really having a constructive role in a positive way. And so I just, first of all, want to say it's really great to have some men here celebrating International Women's Day with us and having this conversation today as well. And Phillip, you have a fantastic story to tell, I think, about just what your organization is doing, but also I think you came to this very uniquely, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how you've come here, and maybe a little bit about what you've learned in what you're doing at PwC.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And, I will echo, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I do think it is important, to have men in part of this conversation, because I think to have a conversation around gender equality where you only have one gender obviously doesn't get us there. So it also gives me an appreciation of what a lot of times my female colleagues go through when, you know, they're sitting as the only woman at a table with a lot of guys. So I can tell you the first couple of times I did it, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm getting more comfortable at it. So I think our story, you know, has got a great sort of momentum, but as we began, we had done a lot of work around trying to solve the problem. And we had started with what I would say is high-level conversations. Gender equality is important. You know, and over a period of time, in reality, we weren't really making a big impact. And I think the reason behind that is there will be a small portion of an organization who buys into that at a conceptual level. But the reality is you have unconscious and conscious bias inside organizations. So what we then started to do was to turn the language into, this is a business imperative. And for us, and I would say for all organizations, it's all around talent. So we started to break it into, here's some simple facts. So as PwC, we hire at our intake level 50-50, and in fact, in some years, we sort of 52 men and women. And the reality is when we start getting to the mid-career point, which is about 5 to 7 years in, we start losing top talent women at a significantly greater rate than their male counterparts. Now, it varies in our different lines of service, but then the end result is when you get to our executive ranks, which is partners, you know, today we're about 72% male partners. So we use that as the foundation that says, we hire the best and brightest and incredible talent, and we put this effort and energy in, and then we lose that. And there were deep perspectives on, well, here's all the reasons why they leave. And, you know, I would say that we've proven that all of those points of view that people have are actually wrong. Because we now have role models across every perspective of, you know, and the common one is, you know, hey, this is the time you're going to start a family. We have lots of senior leaders who have shown that with the right support, that actually can be overcome. But we took that and we've built this amazing program, which is now, we've just finished our 5th year. We don't have the problem of explaining to people why this is important, because for 2 reasons. One is we've got the numbers. We can show that the retention of these amazingly talented women who have gone through the program has increased significantly. The number of our partners who are graduates of the program is increasing, and about 60% of our partner pipeline, the women segment of that partner pipeline, are graduates of the program, which puts us on course to the goal that our CEO set, which is we want to have our new partner class of 2020 to be 50-50. So that's what we've done. It's been an awesome experience. I have some of my teammates who have really helped make this program come together. So I think, yeah, you know, we're proud of it and we're making an impact.
That's amazing. So you mentioned mentorship and sponsorship, which we hear a lot about how important that is for women in terms of really advancing their careers. Because of Me Too, I've sort of started to hear some of my male colleagues sort of talk about backing away from developing sort of any kind of a more professional, close relationship to their female colleagues. And I'm just wondering if others are hearing that as well in terms of your world, Caroline.
I mean, I think whenever there's a social movement that is pushing to progress, pushing to challenge the status quo, pushing to make real change happen, there is always some inertia that comes along with it. And so I would say, you know what, I'm not surprised. I've heard many men. I was speaking last week on this same topic, and we opened the questions up to the audience, and there were many men in the audience, and this young gentleman came up to the mic and said, you know, I hear what you're saying, but like, what if I just want to tell a woman that she's looking nice today, or she's beautiful, and you know, now I'm feeling I can't even do that anymore. Well, I think that's a valid point. I understand where he's maybe coming from. But the reality is that women and men, in some cases, have faced years of systemic discrimination simply because they were women, or simply that allow women to participate. In Canada, if we can get women participating equally as much as men, we know that we would increase the economy by $500 billion. So again, these are the end goals that we need to keep in mind, because ultimately this benefits men and women. So I hear the comment, but I do think we've just got to keep pushing forward.
Teresa, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I think with the Me Too movement, in sports especially, there's just so few women working in sports. I think what it has done is has given a voice to those people who maybe couldn't, or felt like they couldn't say something. I think because there was so few people there already, you talk about being in a room and being the only man. Like, I don't think I've ever been in a room that's had, a lot of times I'm the only woman. So I think you kind of just start to get comfortable in those positions. And I think maybe more than anything, it's, made everybody, especially as a female in a very male-dominated industry, not let some of those things slide that maybe you did before. And I think a lot of it is just unintentional. I know that we had a big town hall before the season started to make sure that our staff was all aligned. And I'm very proud to say the Raptors have 8 women working directly with the team on the Raptors side, and a few more on the 905 side, our minor league team that plays in Mississauga. So we were well represented. As crazy as that sounds, we had 8 out of about 45 people, but we're definitely have the most women working directly with the team throughout all of the NBA, and I don't know the stats, but I'd go to say probably in professional sports. And I had a chance to say, what happens a lot is sometimes, people get very passionate and they have choice words that they want to share. And what would happen sometimes is they'd say, oh, well, I'm sorry, Teresa, I didn't mean to offend you, or another woman in the room. And I had to say, you may think that you're being sensitive to me, but ultimately you're pointing me out because I'm different. And I don't think anybody in that room had ever seen it that way. So I think it's never intentional, but it's given people a voice to say something that maybe they felt, and maybe point out some of those unconscious biases that happen. So I think personally, when we talk about the Me Too movement, I see that's the effect that it's really had in a very specific way with the Toronto Raptors.
So Phillip, I know that you are a really passionate coach for the group that you mentor or work with at PwC, and how do you sort of recruit others to this cause?
Yeah, so and I think maybe I'll sort of build upon the question around sponsorship, because there's no question that the key to success is sponsorship. There are very few people that you'll ever meet who would say, I got to where I am without sponsorship. And then you've got the second fact, which is women tend to be over-mentored and under-sponsored. And that probably can be easily explained by, we still have a male-dominated sort of corporate America. And, McKinsey in their sort of annual report actually called that out last year. So I think the Me Too movement does have a potential, but I think you have to just get over that, because, and what we've done is 2 things. One is we actually inform and educate the folks on our program around how you earn sponsorship. And then the second thing we've done is we've done a lot of work around raising the awareness around why sponsorship is important. And then we ask people to sponsor someone. We don't tell them who it is, because we don't believe you can actually assign somebody, because our experience has been that doesn't work. But if you say, go out and find someone that you believe in, you see what they have, and sponsor them, and then tell us how it's going. And that grassroots movement is really how we're doing from the bottom-up approach. And we've also used the he for she movement to rally a lot of our male partners and senior leaders to actually get with the cause and to say, we're going to sponsor someone. And then the other one, in the spirit of unconscious bias, is actually when you see unconscious bias, don't confront it, because it's unconscious, but engage in the education. And where people start to do that, we're actually seeing the change in the conversation. And, at once you get some momentum, it's almost like a snowball effect. More and more people get on board, and you can see this is how you solve the problem. So I'm really confident that, and especially in Canada, this quest for gender equality, we can absolutely get there. And in some ways, if we as Canadians cannot get there, then the rest of the world has a real big problem.
I can't believe we're nearly out of time because this has gone so fast. But I think sort of maybe as a final kind of question I'll ask all three of you to answer is maybe a little bit of wisdom or a little bit of advice that you can share with the audience, either a strategy that you've used to advance your own career, or something that you've seen another woman in your organization or outside of your organization that she's used to increase her profile in the organization and advance her career. Maybe we can just share a little bit of wisdom with the other women in the room before we wrap up. Do you want to go first, Caroline?
Sure. So I get the hard question first. We can talk about mentoring a lot, and I do agree. I think women are over-mentored. I constantly hear from women, please suggest a mentor, be a mentor. And I think there is some benefit in that, but it's almost like we're trying to use it as a bit of a silver bullet. Then there is sponsorship, but the challenge with sponsorship is that it's not really within our own control. We're still sort of hoping that a man in power might sponsor us. So my recommendation and my advice is I think we underestimate courage. And I will tell you this, if you want to be in a senior level role, you have to practice courage along the way, because you are going to be required, if you are going to change the status quo, to make some very courageous decisions that go against the grain. And you can't start to learn how to be courageous once you're in the senior role. You need to learn how to be courageous along the way. And in fact, that's what's going to get you there. And I say, courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing it despite fear. So, question to the women in the group. How many of you have tried to do something this year that is courageous that you thought might just get me fired? Okay. People laugh at this question all the time. But it is so important, because it's really when you're at that kind of pivotal moment where you're thinking this may not work or this may work, you're actually starting to produce real change. And so I say, step out in courage, try things along the way, take risks. These are the things that will advance your career, that will get you noticed, that will give you profile, because there's not a lot of us that are willing to really go against the grain. Leadership is oftentimes about sacrifice. It's about going out there first, and oftentimes being the one who is starting the change despite the fact that there may be others that want it, but you are the one that's willing to go out there and potentially even sacrifice yourself in the quest to challenge the status quo. So again, courage is so critical, and practicing that courage builds resilience. And you need resilience if you're going to change the status quo.
What's your advice, Phillip?
Well, so I'll build upon that, and maybe sort of the topic to the guys in the room, because I agree with you. I think that's absolutely required. But in order to make that courage turn into something productive, you actually need to have a sponsor who, when that individual who maybe have pushed a little bit too hard and broken some glass, and then the conversation happens behind closed doors, that's where the role of the sponsor comes to play. And the sponsor stands up for that individual and says, just because you don't like the fact that that young woman is being aggressive, which is, by the way, if she was a man, you would say, awesome. Sponsors stand there and say, enough of that. And I think all the guys in this room should basically leave and say, if you're not sponsoring somebody, you should figure it out. Find someone. And my experience has been, you actually get more out of the relationship than the person that you are supporting, because in this quest towards understanding how we actually work together and collaborate, it's been an amazing learning experience for me, and that's why I always look at it and say, I'm not sure that they actually got as much benefit as I did. So I would leave it at that. It's sponsor someone.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the two things, I wish I would have gotten to go first now. The two things I was thinking of is really, number one, don't eliminate yourself. I think it kind of goes with courage. I know I'm guilty of it. I've done it throughout my career. I've eliminated myself from a position, from a promotion, from going after something before anybody stood in my way. So unfortunately, I read Lean In. We do that to ourselves. It's a trait of women, and we have to stop doing that. So don't eliminate yourself, whether it's an opportunity in the career, your personal side. Let somebody else stop you before you stop yourself. We have enough barriers to get over. We don't have to be our biggest one. And then the second thing, and it kind of goes to what you're talking about with sponsor, is just we have to have advocates for the advancement of women. You have to be an advocate for those people that you know that need a little extra push, who maybe you've seen them eliminate themselves, and you need to tell them to go forward. And then you also need to make sure that, unfortunately, to get to the very senior levels, a lot of times those decisions are made behind closed doors, and it's still all men there. So how are you making sure that women are being talked about in that conversation? You never know unless you're in that position. So I know in our conversations at the Raptors, when we're hiring new people, I won't say women are always in the conversation, but if there's a qualified woman who can do the job, absolutely they're in the conversation. And I think that's really, really important, that there's a voice there and that there are advocates for the advancement of women. And I think, saying a sponsor, I think, is pretty much the same thing, right? Yep. So I just reiterated what you both said.
Thank you. I'm officially 2 minutes over time, so please join me in thanking this fantastic panel, and happy International Women's Day.
One is up.
I'd hope we'd have a few minutes for questions, but we're out of time. Is that correct? Where's the team? Bill, that's it. Okay, okay. So I'd like to ask Mr. Chandran Fernando of Matrix 360 to thank our speakers.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Chandran Fernando from Matrix 360. I'm the founding and managing partner of our organization. Firstly, I would really sincerely like to thank you for attending this important conversation this afternoon. At Matrix 360, we speak, breathe, and live diversity and inclusion every day. Our platform is built on purposeful leadership. For 17 years, yes, I look like I'm 25, right? Matrix has laid the foundation for diversity and inclusion in the commercial real estate industry and development sector as well, across Canada. We are partners and champions of progressive growth for people and business. It is with great privilege and honor that I stand here with you today. You see, today's a conversation that strikes a major chord in my DNA: gender parity and female leadership. Women have continued to shape, guide, and inspire me to the man that I am today. As a male, I strongly believe that it's integral and key that I use my male voice to elevate the importance of female leadership in all capacities. And I say female because what Carolyn mentioned, it's about girls and women. We cannot forget about our young girls who are in the system of our society, of our ecosystem. So I salute all the women and men who have come before me today. More importantly, I would really like to acknowledge the Executive Board Committee and staff at the Empire Club for your unconditional dedication and commitment. Your thought leadership is much appreciated and welcomed, so thank you all. And finally, And finally, to our distinguished panelists, your intel, your perspectives, and further commitment to spotlight the importance of female leadership in our everyday society is very important, and I thank you. Now, lastly, if I may leave with you one thought and one call to action with you this afternoon. The thought. It is time to acknowledge and be mindful that diversity is a fact, and it's not an emerging trend. Inclusion is an intentional action, and belonging is the outcome that we all must strive towards. The action, the call to action. As you all are here, and you are now more in the know after today's conversation, I ask that you consciously ask your leaders, your peers, your community, your male colleagues and female colleagues, and yourself, how are you able to build an inclusive society and live the reality of being Canadian and global citizens? As we are a nation of diversity and inclusion, and we must embrace and cherish this every day of our life. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart to your heart, and please continue to be inspired and push and challenge and be courageous and take the risk and ask your leaders and your peers, what are we doing to make Canada a more inclusive and progressive society? Thank you again.
Well, I hope you all found this luncheon as inspiring as I did. And I do want to say special thank you to Megan Boyle, the Empire Club director, who made all of this come together for us. She had some formidable competition. You may have heard that the Prime Minister is in the city today. And so I'm very impressed with the way that she's pulled our program together. We all owe her a great debt of gratitude. So thank you so much, Megan. I also want to express a sincere thank you to our generous sponsors for making this event possible, Matrix 360, Scotiabank, and Coca-Cola for participating. Without sponsors, we couldn't hold these kinds of forums that I think are so important to the public dialogue, and we are sincerely grateful to all of you for helping to make that possible, so thank you. I also want to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, for webcasting today's event for thousands of viewers around the world. Also, thank you to the National Post, our print media sponsor, and to Toronto Life, our media sponsor. We're just delighted with that partnership, and Jessica's with us today, so we're very grateful. Although our club has been around since 1903, we have moved into the 21st century, and we're active on social media. Please follow us on Twitter at empire_club and visit us online at www.empireclub.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Finally, please join us again soon at our next lunch, this one on March the 9th. This is a banner week for us, featuring Josh Blair from TELUS right at this location, 1 King West. Thank you so much for your attendance today, and this meeting is now adjourned.